It was an ordinary Saturday, the kind of day when the sun shines bright and the air is filled with the laughter of children playing in the park. My son Jake was excited for his baseball game. I was looking forward to it too. It was a routine we cherished as a family. My wife Lisa had promised to be there just like always, cheering from the sidelines. But that morning something felt off. I woke up to an empty bed. Lisa had left early, supposedly to help set up for the game. I shook off the feeling of unease and focused on getting Jake ready. He was in high spirits, his little baseball cap perched jauntily on his head, bat in hand, ready to take on the world. I smiled at him, trying to mirror his enthusiasm. Little did I know that the day would unravel in a way that would change everything. As we arrived at the field, I noticed Lisa was still not there. A nagging voice in my head whispered that something was wrong, but I brushed it aside. I took my seat in the bleachers, the smell of freshly cut grass and the sound of baseballs hitting gloves filling the air. The game started and I tried to focus on Jake's performance, but my thoughts kept drifting back to Lisa. Halfway through the game, I spotted her. She was standing near the dugout, laughing and chatting animatedly with Coach Mark. My heart sank. It wasn't just the laughter that bothered me. It was the intimacy in their exchanges. I had seen that look in her eyes before, the spark of connection that I thought was reserved for us. As the game progressed, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. I pulled out my phone, intending to text Lisa, but I hesitated. What would I say? Are you having fun with Mark? I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but my gut was screaming at me. I decided to watch them more closely. In between innings, I caught snippets of their conversation. She was leaning in, her hand lightly touching his arm. My heart raced, and a cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I felt like I was watching a scene from a nightmare, helplessly trapped as the truth unfolded before my eyes. Then, in a moment that felt like a cruel twist of fate, I saw it. Mark leaned in and whispered something in her ear that made her laugh, and in that instant I knew. The betrayal hit me like a freight train. I felt the world around me blur, the shouts from the field fading into a distant echo. I was frozen in place, the realization crashing over me like a wave, suffocating and relentless. I had trusted her. I had built a life with her, a family. The image of the woman I loved crumbling before me felt unbearable. Jake's laughter rang in my ears, and I wanted to scream, to tear apart the facade we had built together. But I couldn't. Not here, not now. I turned my gaze back to the field, forcing myself to focus on Jake, who was cheering with his teammates. I wanted to protect him from this ugly reality, but the pain in my chest was overwhelming. I felt like a ghost, drifting through the game, watching my wife betray me in the most intimate way possible. The game ended, but my world had just begun to unravel. As the parents cheered and congratulated the kids, I sat silently, contemplating the depths of my anger and betrayal. I felt lost, trapped between the love I had for my family and the seething rage that threatened to consume me. I knew I had to confront Lisa, but how? The thought of confronting her alone felt inadequate. I needed to expose the truth, to make her understand the weight of what she had done. My mind raced with thoughts of revenge, and I felt the fire of determination ignite within me. This was just the beginning. I would not let this betrayal go unpunished. The days that followed the game were a blur of emotions. I went through the motions of my daily life, but inside I was a storm of anger, sadness, and disbelief. Each time I looked at Lisa, I felt a mix of love and hatred. How could she do this to us? To our family? The laughter I had once cherished now felt like a cruel reminder of the facade she had built around me. I found myself replaying moments from our marriage, searching for signs I had missed. Our wedding day had been perfect. I remember the way she looked in her dress, the joy radiating from her. I thought we were happy, but now I questioned everything. Had it all been a lie? The dinners, the vacations, the late-night talks, they all seemed tainted by her betrayal. Jake, bless him, was oblivious to the turmoil swirling around us. His innocence was a bittersweet reminder of what I stood to lose. I watched him play, his laughter ringing in the air, and I felt a pang of guilt. I didn't want to shatter his world, but how could I continue to pretend that everything was okay? I began to think about Coach Mark. He was supposed to be a mentor, a role model for our son. Instead, he had crossed a line that should never have been crossed. I couldn't help but feel a sense of betrayal toward him as well. I had trusted him to guide Jake, to help him develop his skills and character. Instead, he had taken advantage of my trust, seducing my wife right under my nose. As I stewed in my anger, I also felt a sense of helplessness. Confronting Lisa felt daunting. I had no proof, just my gut feeling and a burning desire for revenge. I needed to gather evidence to make her face the truth of her actions. I started paying closer attention to her behavior, noting the little things, a late text, the way she would laugh a bit too loudly at Mark's jokes. One evening, I decided to confront Lisa about my suspicions. I needed to know if my gut was right. I waited for the perfect moment when Jake was tucked in bed and the house was quiet. I felt the tension in the air as I sat across from her at the kitchen table. "Lisa, can we talk?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Of course," she replied, her smile faltering slightly. "I've noticed you've been spending a lot of time with Mark," I said, watching her reaction closely. "It just seems different lately." Her eyes widened, and for a split second I saw fear flash across her face. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice shaky. "I mean, it seems like you're really close, closer than you should be, especially with our son on the team." She brushed it off, laughing nervously. "You're being ridiculous. He's just a coach. We're all friends." But her response only fueled my suspicion. I could feel the anger boiling beneath the surface, but I kept it in check. I didn't want to accuse her without proof, but I knew I had to dig deeper. The next few days turned into a blur of surveillance. I started following her, discreetly watching her interactions with Mark. I noted the times they were together, the places they went. I even enlisted the help of a friend who had a knack for technology. He helped me set up a few apps on her phone, allowing me to monitor her texts and calls without her knowledge. In my heart, I knew I was crossing a line, but the thought of her betrayal fueled my desire for revenge. I needed to expose her, to make her feel as betrayed as I did. As I gathered evidence, I realized I was becoming consumed by my anger. I had to remind myself of Jake. I didn't want him to suffer because of our problems. But the more I learned, the more I felt justified in my plans. I discovered texts that were flirtatious, even suggestive, and each one felt like a dagger in my heart. The betrayal was clear, and I could no longer stay silent. I felt the need to confront Lisa in a way that would leave no doubt about her actions. I began to formulate a plan. I envisioned the day of the next game, when the entire team and their families would be present. I would reveal the truth in front of everyone, exposing her affair with Mark. The thought sent chills down my spine, but it also filled me with a sense of power. I knew the consequences would be severe, but at that moment I didn't care. I was more focused on the satisfaction of watching her face as the truth unfolded. I wanted her to understand the depth of her betrayal, to feel the pain I had endured. As I prepared for the confrontation, I felt a mix of dread and excitement. I was ready to play the perfect game of revenge. The plan began to take shape in my mind, a meticulous outline of how I would expose Lisa and coach Mark. I knew that timing was everything. I had to choose the right moment to ensure maximum impact. The next game was just days away, and the thought of standing in front of the bleachers, the crowd buzzing with excitement, sent adrenaline coursing through my veins. I started gathering all the evidence I could find. Each text message, each playful interaction I had witnessed between Lisa and Mark became a piece of my puzzle. My friend Tom helped me compile everything into a single file on my laptop. We worked late into the night, poring over the messages and planning how I would reveal the truth. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Tom asked, concern etched on his face. "This could blow up in your face, man." I nodded, feeling a mix of determination and fear. "I have to. She needs to face what she's done. I can't let this go." Tom sighed, but he understood. He had seen the toll this affair had taken on me. I shared snippets of my conversations with Lisa, her dismissive laughter, the way she would brush off my concerns. It only fueled my resolve. As the game approached, I began to visualize the moment I would stand up in front of everyone. I imagined the gasps, the looks of shock on the faces of the other parents, and especially the look on Lisa's face as the truth hit her. I wanted to shatter the illusion she had created to expose her for what she really was. I decided to confront her during the post-game gathering when everyone would be relaxed and mingling. The plan was simple. I would wait for a moment when the crowd was at its peak, and then I would drop the bombshell. I practiced what I would say in the mirror, rehearsing the lines until they felt natural. Lisa, we need to talk about you and Mark. Everyone deserves to know the truth. The words rolled off my tongue, and I imagined the weight they would carry when spoken in front of the entire team. I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and anxiety. I knew that revealing her infidelity would create chaos, but I also believed it was necessary. I spent sleepless nights thinking about how my life would change after this moment. Would I lose Lisa forever? Would Jake understand? As the day of the game drew closer, I felt the tension building within me. I had to keep my cool to appear normal in front of Lisa and Jake. I did want them to suspect anything. I played the part of the supportive husband and father, cheering for Jake, laughing with the other parents, all while plotting the ultimate act of revenge. The night before the game, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I thought about the life I wanted to protect, the family I had built with Lisa. But the pain of her betrayal overshadowed any lingering affection I had for her. I felt like a puppet master, pulling strings to orchestrate the perfect reveal. I knew I had to be careful. I couldn't let Lisa see the storm brewing inside me. I had to act as if everything was fine, all while preparing to unleash the truth. I even considered how Jake would react, the confusion and hurt that would wash over him. I couldn't let that stop me, though. I had to make sure that Lisa understood the consequences of her actions. The day of the game arrived and I was a bundle of nerves. As we drove to the field, I could feel the tension in the car. Jake was excited, chatting about his hopes for the game, while Lisa seemed oblivious, lost in her own thoughts. I caught glimpses of her smiling at messages on her phone and I felt my stomach twist. Was she texting Mark? Once we arrived, I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. The field was buzzing with energy, families gathering, kids running around, and coaches preparing for the game. I spotted Mark at the dugout, laughing with the other coaches, and I felt a surge of anger. As the game progressed, I kept my focus on the plan. I had to time my reveal perfectly. I watched as Jake played hard, giving his all, and I couldn't help but feel a twinge of pride. He didn't deserve any of this chaos. During the last inning, I knew it was time. I glanced at Lisa, who was cheering for Jake, her eyes shining with pride. I felt a pang of regret, but I pushed it aside. This was bigger than us. I had to show her the consequences of her actions. As the final whistle blew, signaling the end of the game, the excitement in the air was palpable. Parents began to gather around, congratulating the kids, and I knew I had my moment. I took a deep breath and stood up, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on me. "Can I have everyone's attention, please?" I called out, my voice steady but filled with purpose. The chatter quieted and all eyes turned toward me. I could see Jake's confused expression, and I felt a moment of hesitation, but I pressed on. "I need to talk about something important, something that involves my wife, Lisa, and Coach Mark." The tension in the air thickened as I prepared to unveil the truth, knowing that this moment would change everything. The moment hung in the air, heavy with anticipation. The crowd had fallen silent, all eyes fixed on me. I could feel the weight of their gazes, a mixture of curiosity and concern. My heart raced as I prepared to unleash the truth that had been festering inside me. I glanced at Lisa, who had gone pale, her smile fading as she processed my words. "Lisa," I continued, my voice steady but laced with emotion, "I think it's time everyone knows what's really going on between you and Coach Mark." A murmur rippled through the crowd, whispers of disbelief and confusion. I could see parents exchanging glances, some looking shocked, others intrigued. I felt a rush of adrenaline. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. Over the past few weeks, I've seen things that no husband should ever have to witness. The way you two laughed together, the late-night texts, the secretive smiles. It's all been building to this moment, I said, my voice rising with intensity. "Stop it," Lisa shouted, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "This is ridiculous. You're making a scene." But I pressed on, fueled by the fire of betrayal. Ridiculous. You call this ridiculous. I call it betrayal. You've been cheating on me with our son's baseball coach. The crowd gasped, and I could see Jake's face turn from confusion to horror. My heart broke as I caught his eye, the realization of what I was doing crashing down on me. I had wanted to protect him from this, yet here I was, dragging him into the chaos. Dad. Jake's voice trembled, and I felt a pang of guilt wash over me. But there was no turning back now. Jake, I'm so sorry, I said, my voice softening. As I turned to him, I didn't want you to find out this way, but you deserve to know the truth. Lisa stepped forward, desperation etched on her face. This isn't how it looks. You're twisting everything. Mark is just a friend. But my resolve was unwavering. A friend? Is that what you call someone you've been sneaking around with? While I trusted you, while I believed in our family. Mark, who had been standing on the sidelines, finally stepped into the fray. This isn't right, man. You're making accusations without proof. I turned my gaze toward him, anger boiling within me. Proof. I have all the proof I need. The texts, the late-night calls, everything. You've betrayed not just me, but our son. The crowd began to murmur again, some parents looking uncomfortable, others shaking their heads in disbelief. I could see the shock on their faces. I could feel the embarrassment radiating from Lisa. Let's not do this here, Lisa insisted, her voice shaking as she tried to regain control of the situation. We can talk about this in private, but I couldn't back down now. No, Lisa, you don't get to dictate the terms anymore. You've made your choices, and now everyone deserves to know the truth. Jake stood frozen, confusion and hurt etched on his face. I wanted to reach out to him, to tell him that everything would be okay, but I knew that wasn't true. This moment would change everything for him. As I continued, I saw the reactions of the other parents. Some looked sympathetic, while others looked judgmental. I could feel the weight of their scrutiny, but it didn't matter to me anymore. I was beyond caring what they thought. Mark, you've crossed a line that should never have been crossed, I said, my voice low but filled with fury. You were supposed to be a role model, a coach, not someone who betrays a family. The tension in the air was palpable. I could feel the heat of anger radiating off both Lisa and Mark. Lisa's face was a mixture of anger and shame, while Mark's expression shifted from defiance to concern as the gravity of the situation sunk in. Let's just talk about this later in private, Mark urged, trying to defuse the situation. But I wasn't going to let him off that easily. No, you don't get to brush this under the rug. You both need to face the consequences of your actions. At that moment, I realized something important. I wasn't just confronting Lisa and Mark for my own sake. I was doing it for Jake. He needed to see that actions have consequences, that betrayal isn't something we can sweep away in silence. The crowd was now fully engaged, some parents taking out their phones, perhaps to capture the drama unfolding before them. I felt a rush of power, but it was quickly overshadowed by the weight of my actions. Lisa, you need to understand that what you've done is unforgivable, I said, my voice breaking slightly. You've shattered our family, and now you have to face that. The reality of my words hit me hard. I was tearing apart the life we had built together, but I felt it was necessary. I wanted her to feel the pain I had felt, to understand the depth of her betrayal. As the crowd began to react, I could hear whispers spreading like wildfire. Some parents were sympathetic, others were shocked, and a few looked on with judgment, but amidst it all, I only had eyes for my son. Jake, I'm so sorry, I said again, my heart breaking at the sight of his confusion. I never wanted you to be part of this. Tears welled up in his eyes, and I felt like I was tearing his world apart. But I also knew that the truth was more important than the facade we had been living behind. In that moment, I realized that the confrontation was just the beginning. The fallout would be immense, but it was a price I was willing to pay to expose the truth. As I stood there, the weight of the moment crashing down on me, I felt a strange sense of relief. The truth was out, and now there was no going back. The silence that followed my revelation was deafening. For a moment, it felt as if time had stopped. The crowd stood frozen, a tableau of shock and disbelief, as Lisa processed the gravity of my words. I could see her struggling to maintain her composure, her hands trembling at her sides. "Everyone, please," she finally managed to say, her voice shaking. "This isn't what It seems, but the damage was done. The truth was out, and I could feel the weight of the moment bearing down on us. Parents exchanged glances, some whispering among themselves, while others looked directly at Lisa and Mark with a mix of pity and disdain. Jake stood beside me, his face a mix of confusion and pain. I wanted to reach out and comfort him, but I couldn't break the tension that had enveloped us. I had to stay strong, to stand firm in the face of this chaos. "Is it true, Mom?" Jake finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The hurt in his tone cut through me like a knife. "Jake, please let me explain," Lisa said, stepping toward him, but I instinctively moved to block her. I didn't want her to manipulate the situation further. "No, you need to tell him the truth," I said, my voice rising. "He deserves to know what you've done." The crowd shifted, parents leaning in to hear what would happen next. I could see their expressions. Some were sympathetic, others were judgmental, but all were captivated by the unfolding drama. "Mom, is it true?" Jake repeated, his eyes searching hers for an answer. Lisa hesitated, her expression faltering as she fought to find the right words. "It was a mistake, Jake, a terrible mistake. I love you and I love your father. Do you?" Jake shot back, his voice breaking. "How could you do this to us?" The pain in his voice was palpable, and I felt my heart shatter for him. This was the moment I had dreaded, the moment when our son would realize that the family he knew was crumbling. "I didn't mean for it to happen," Lisa pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "I was confused and Mark was just there, just there," I echoed, incredulous. "You were supposed to be my partner, my wife. You betrayed not just me, but our family." Mark stood to the side, his face a mask of concern and guilt. "This isn't how it should be handled, man. We should talk this out privately." "Privately?" I scoffed. "You think this is something we can just sweep under the rug? You think you can just talk your way out of this?" The crowd was now buzzing with energy, the tension palpable. I could see the shock on the faces of other parents, some shaking their heads in disbelief. I felt a rush of adrenaline. This was the moment of truth, and I couldn't back down now. "Jake, I'm so sorry for dragging you into this," I said, my voice softening. "But you need to understand that this is real. Your mom made choices that hurt us all." "I hate this," Jake said, tears streaming down his cheeks. "I hate this so much." I felt helpless, witnessing my son's pain. I wanted to reach out and comfort him, but I knew that I had to let him process this in his own way. "Jake, I know this is hard," I said, desperation creeping into my voice, "but I want you to know that I love you no matter what happens." Lisa stepped forward again, her face contorted with anguish. "Jake, please don't hate me. I made a mistake and I'm so sorry." But Jake shook his head, stepping back from her. "You don't get to say that, Mom. You broke our family, you broke my trust." As the weight of his words hung in the air, I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. I had wanted to expose Lisa, to make her face the consequences of her actions, but now I was watching the collateral damage unfold. "Look, I know this is hard for everyone," I said, trying to regain control of the situation. "But we need to be honest about what happened. This isn't just about us anymore, it's about Jake." The crowd was still, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. I could see parents shifting uncomfortably, some whispering to one another, trying to make sense of the chaos. "Mark, you need to step up and take responsibility for your actions," I said, turning my gaze to him. "You've betrayed a family that trusted you. You were supposed to be a mentor, not a homewrecker." Mark looked conflicted, glancing at Lisa, then back at me. "I never intended for any of this to happen. It was a mistake and I'm sorry. But sorry doesn't fix this." I shot back, my voice rising again. "This isn't just a mistake, this is a betrayal that affects all of us." The crowd began to murmur again, and I could feel the weight of judgment in the air. I had exposed Lisa and Mark for what they were, but now I was left to deal with the fallout. "Jake, let's get out of here," I said, feeling the need to protect him from the chaos. "We can talk more at home." He nodded, his expression still filled with confusion and hurt. As I turned to leave, I caught one last glimpse of Lisa, her face a mixture of despair and regret. "Please don't go, Jake," she pleaded, but I knew that the damage was done. As we walked away from the field, I felt a mix of emotions swirling inside me: anger, sadness, regret. I had played the perfect game of revenge, but at what cost? The fallout was just beginning, and I could already feel the weight of what lay ahead. The car ride home was silent, the air thick with unspoken words. Jake sat in the back seat, his face buried in his hands, and I could feel the weight of his pain pressing down on me. I wanted to reach out to comfort him, but I didn't know how. I had just shattered his world, and the guilt gnawed at my insides. "Jake," I finally said, breaking the silence, "I'm so sorry you had to see that today. I never wanted you to be part of this." He looked up, tears streaming down his cheeks. "Why did you have to do that, Dad? Why couldn't you just talk to her?" I swallowed hard, my throat tight with emotion. "I thought it was important for you to know the truth. I thought you deserved to see what she was really doing. Now everything is ruined." He shouted, his voice filled with anguish. "I hate her, I hate him, I hate all of this." I felt my heart break for him. He was right. Everything was different now. The family we had built together was crumbling, and I had played a part in that destruction. I had wanted revenge, but now I was left with the aftermath of my actions. When we finally arrived home, the house felt empty and cold. I watched as Jake trudged up the stairs, his shoulders slumped in defeat. I wanted to follow him to talk, but I knew he needed space. I needed space too. I sank into the couch, my mind racing. I had exposed Lisa and Mark, but at what cost? I had wanted to make her feel the pain I had endured, to show her the consequences of her actions, but instead I had hurt our son in the process. The phone buzzed beside me, and I glanced at the screen. It was a message from Tom asking if I was okay. I didn't respond. I felt like I was in a fog, the reality of what I had done crashing over me like a tidal wave. As the evening wore on, I heard Jake moving around upstairs. I wanted to go to him, to tell him that everything would be all right, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had irreparably damaged our family. Lisa didn't come home that night. I knew she was probably at Mark's place, trying to figure out what to do next. I felt a mix of anger and sadness. She had made her choices, and now she was facing the consequences. But I couldn't help but wonder if it would be too late. For us, the next day I woke up to an empty house. Jake had stayed with a friend, and I was left alone with my thoughts. I spent the morning trying to process everything that had happened. I replayed the confrontation in my mind, the way Lisa had looked at me, the pain in Jake's voice. By the afternoon, I decided that I needed to talk to Lisa. I couldn't let this go unresolved. I grabbed my phone and sent her a message, asking her to meet me at a nearby cafe. I didn't know what I would say, but I knew we needed to have a conversation. When I arrived, I found her sitting at a table, her face pale and drawn. She looked up as I approached, and I could see the weight of regret in her eyes. "Hi," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Hi," she replied, her voice shaky. We sat in silence for a moment, the tension palpable. Finally, I broke the silence. "I'm sorry for what happened yesterday. I didn't want to hurt Jake." "I know," she said, tears brimming in her eyes, "but you did, you really hurt him, and I don't know how to fix this." I nodded, feeling the weight of our situation. "I've been thinking about everything, about us, about Jake. I never wanted it to come to this." "I didn't want it to either," she said, her voice breaking. "I made a terrible mistake, and I don't know how to take it back." We sat in silence again, both grappling with the enormity of what had happened. "What do we do now?" I finally asked. "I don't know," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I love you, but I've hurt you in ways I can't even begin to explain. I don't know if you can forgive me." "Forgiveness takes time," I said, my heart heavy with uncertainty. "But we need to figure out how to support Jake. He's the one who's really suffering." Lisa nodded, wiping away her tears. "I know. I want to be there for him, but I also need to take responsibility for what I've done." As we sat there, I realized that the road ahead would be long and difficult. We had a long way to go if we wanted to rebuild what had been broken. But for the first time since the confrontation, I felt a glimmer of hope. "We need to talk to Jake together," I said, my voice firm. "He deserves to hear the truth from both of us." Lisa nodded, determination in her eyes. "You're right. He needs to know that we're still a family, even if it doesn't look the same as before." As we left the cafe, I felt a sense of purpose. We had a long journey ahead, but I knew that if we worked together, we could navigate the pain and find a way to support our son. The betrayal had changed everything, but it didn't have to define us. I took a deep breath, ready to face the challenges ahead. The truth had come out, and now it was time to rebuild. And as I thought about Jake, I felt a renewed sense of commitment to protect him, to guide him through the storm. Together, we could heal the wounds that had been inflicted and find a way to move forward, even if it meant redefining what family meant to us. As I drove home, I felt a flicker of hope in the midst of the chaos. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was ready to face it. Together, we would find a way to mend our shattered family.